Hey everybody, this is Elliot and I'm over here with Dre D of Darkside Fitness. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's been quite a morning, as you know yourself. So I'm excited and thank you for coming on and sharing some of your story, especially with everything that's been going on. So first, how did you get into pole? I know you have some information on your website, but
I got into pole because I had done a lot of dancing when I was little, and I was looking to get into something as an adult. And I tried some hip hop classes, and I wasn't a huge fan. And a Groupon popped up in my email one day for pole dancing, and so I kind of told myself, I was like, oh, all right, I'll give this a try. I was like, it's probably going to be kind of silly, but I'll give it a shot. I went to a class and it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And it was actually really fun. So I ended up buying some classes right at the end of that class and started taking a full class.
and it just kind of took off. Was it did it become a passion or just something that you did?
The classes were honestly a little expensive for me, so I wasn't coming a whole lot right when I started. I was kind of intermittent. I ended up getting a pole at home, and that really helped me to make progress because I had a very hard time with pole from the beginning. It was very hard for me to learn everything. It took me a while to practice everything, and then the owner of that studio asked me to start performing the shows that they had there. So I started performing, and then eventually she asked me to start teaching. So I started teaching.
That seems like a very natural way of going about things.
Yep.
Just just each step of the way, it just the next level was offered to you, and it all kind of took off once you bought that pole.
Yeah, exactly.
I know right now X pole I believe is sold out, so there are a lot of people who don't have poles.
Yeah, some of my students have been having a hard time getting polls.
That's why we've been starting to do a lot of live streams focus on conditioning and some floor work. Occasionally, we have things with polls for people who can do it, but I know a lot of contests have suddenly started saying, "Hey, you know what? If you have a pull-up bar, then just start doing stuff with that. It's good enough." So, where last we left our hero, you started teaching, and you seem to enjoy that, and you were making rapid progress. What caused the transition from I'm going to be a teacher and I'm starting this out to I think I'm going to start or own my own pole dance studio?
Um, so I was going to the other studio, I think, for, well, I'm not sure, about 2 years maybe. And they had really short ceilings, and I had started doing doubles work, so with a partner. And we had a really hard time because the ceilings were so short, we couldn't really do a whole lot of things. So I was really craving to have taller poles, and the owner of that studio had been mentioning that she wanted to open another studio, but just hadn't happened. So um, I just kind of saw an opportunity, and there's not really a whole lot of pole studios around here in my area. So I just took the opportunity to make that happen.
You make it sound your story seems like much easier or much smoother than many other people that I've asked, or it was either
It was definitely a very, very hard thing to do for a lot of reasons. It was definitely not easy at all.
well, what kind of struggles did you have?
um, how do I say this? Well, I did it all by myself. First of all, I didn't really have any support. My family doesn't live in the area,
Mm.
and um, I thought I would have been supported by some of the people in my life that I had at the time, and unfortunately, I was not. So that made it very emotionally difficult for me. Um, and yeah, just I went to school to be an occupational therapist. I have no idea how to own a business or start a business, so I had to just read books and teach myself and learn everything as I went. So that was all new to me, and I was just kind of learning as I go. So
I understand that can be very difficult. And I started my first business. I had somebody who owned multiple shops before, but that quickly burst into a giant ball of fire, which is a great lesson all by itself. I don't suggest anybody else try it, but it was a good lesson. And then after that, I decided to hit the ground running. And once, just like you, I didn't know how to run a business. So the way I describe it is I just started hammering pieces of wood together, hoping that eventually I would have a house, but I didn't necessarily have a plan. There's just so much that was going on. So it could be so very overwhelming. Oh, I need to teaching classes would seem like it's one of the easiest parts of owning a studio. Not counting all the extra paperwork and leases and everything you had to do.
People have no idea how much work goes into it for sure. They just see you teaching classes and they're like, oh, that looks like a piece of cake, and it's like you have no idea. I'm up until 1 a.m. running payroll and doing all these other things. So, and actually, since you mentioned the hammering nails and that kind of thing, it reminded me of the other main challenge I had when I opened my studio is I had hired some contractors to do the work in the space here, because this was actually an old TV repair shop before I opened it. Had concrete floors, all the walls were white, there were cords and wires everywhere. And I didn't really have much experience with construction. And even though I knew the person that was doing the construction, they came in and told me they were going to do all these things within a certain amount of time. And I was like, great. And then time started going on and they didn't do like half the work that they said they were going to do. So I ended up having to do a lot of it myself, like actually physically installing most of the flooring and doing most of the painting in here. So that was definitely an experience, and I was on a time crunch. So I was up here, until 2 a.m. installing flooring and that kind of thing. So that was pretty rough.
That I've had similar experiences. At one point I had 15 employees. I had just kind of started, but we scaled much faster than I should have. And I hired somebody who's like, hey, could you be a manager? And you expect it all to be ready and done. You put a lot of trust and invest a lot of your emotional safety into the person. And then later you find out that everything's falling apart, and it's a very rude awakening. So I had the same thing. Everybody, if you're going to start a business, try to keep a bedtime.
Right. And the lesson I learned was get everything in writing. Always get everything in writing.
That's right. And even the next step, if I may add on to that, people think a lot about contracts. My suggestion would be have your contract be as simple as possible. Get everything in writing. The key thing that you want is an operating agreement, because that is, or a memorandum of understanding that you pass via amongst yourselves via email. Everybody says, hey, I read this and understand. Because that is far more mutable than a contract, and nobody likes to play the gotcha game. That's, I mean, to show a couple of the struggles that I've gone through a bit. But you're right, absolutely everything in writing. Not you want as few miscommunications as possible. And I'm sorry you were doing flooring work at 2 a.m.
But I never want to do it again, so it's okay.
Perfect. So things have become easier over time.
Yeah, over time, a little bit. I mean, obviously up until recently.
Right.
Month or so.
Now, do you still work as an occupational therapist, or do you do a studio full time?
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, I've worked as an occupational therapist the whole time. I was full time when I opened my studio, which was pretty challenging at first doing both, and then kind of dropped down to part time. Had some issues with one of the companies I was working for a bit, so was going through a lot with that, and then actually started my own practice in December. So I've been kind of building that right now, which I actually run in the upstairs room here. So.
Oh, so you have multiple irons and different fires.
Yeah.
If because I'm curious, my mother is actually a vocational rehabilitationist. What does an occupational therapist do?
We help people with injuries or disabilities be able to function as independently as possible. So it's kind of general. We work with people of all different ages and types of people. For example, if somebody has a stroke, we help them be able to use their arm and regain function in the arm so that they can do functional tasks like bathing and dressing themselves. I specialize right now in pediatrics, so I work with mostly kids with autism and help them do like self-help skills, like being able to tie their shoes and dress themselves, fine motor skills, that type of thing, sensory regulation.
That's well, that's I don't know exactly the words, but I have a great deal of respect for that. With my mother with vocational rehabilitation, she works with the state, and she says she takes a lot of people who are down on their luck and offers them access to a bunch of different programs where she works directly with other occupational therapists, and she's mentioned that they all end up specializing. And one of my major clients works with autistic kids specifically to help them grow up, because I know it can be very much so a struggle to understand what's going on around them, because they just they
The sensory stimulation and stuff, yeah, they get really hung up on their self-stimulatory behavior and that kind of thing. They have a hard time.
right. I guess this is going to sound like I'm not doing enough justice, but I would say good on you, and you're certainly one of the heroes, and I have a lot of respect for.
Thank you.
And then you do a pole studio on top of that. Is that a way to unwind, or?
Yeah, I mean, it started, occupational therapy has always been my main career. And then, I opened this studio about 5 years ago, and I've kind of transitioned. I do the therapy more part-time now, and the studio takes up most of my time. But with the changes going on right now, who knows what'll happen from here.
So right before the COVID hit, as I like to say, what plans did you have for your studio?
We were getting ready to do our next performance series. We had a show scheduled for June. We were introducing aerial programs at the studio, so
Mm.
yeah.
I can see with the scaffolding behind you, you have nice tall ceilings just for that.
Yeah, that's the truss.
So once COVID did hit, how did that end up affecting you and your studio?
Well, we had kind of played with offering live classes and online options in the past. There were times where I was running a class and I would go live on Instagram, and if people could make it to the class, they could follow along. So it's definitely something that I've been wanting to do. I've done Skype lessons off and on over the years too. So it was definitely something I wanted to expand into anyways. So as soon as we kind of realized what was happening in the area, we jumped on that. We started doing the Zoom classes while we had our regular classes still going before we had to shut down. So we were doing the classes here, and then we would have the Zoom going and having people kind of joining us from home that way too. So that was kind of a pretty easy, natural progression to do really quickly. I had two instructors that had been working for a while, and then I had a new instructor I was in the process of training when this all happened, and she just jumped right in, and they've been just overly supportive and really helpful. So that's been like a huge lifesaver.
Oh, wow. How has it affected you personally?
Um, it's definitely the whole COVID situation. Is that you're asking?
Yeah, the whole COVID situation. Besides beyond just the studio, how's it affected you as a business owner? How's it affected you and your own pole dance career, as it were?
You know, it's definitely a very fluid situation, and things are changing so rapidly and so drastically. It's been a little hard to keep up with. Everybody, I see everybody's posts of social media and they're at home with nothing to do, and I'm just going crazy. I have so many things I'm trying to do. There's all these new loan and grant programs coming out from the government, and if you're a small business owner, you have to be on top of them because that money is going to go really fast. So I've been keeping up with that and trying to educate myself about all the programs and how to take advantage of some of those. My therapy clients, fortunately, the insurance companies I work with contacted me, and they're allowing us to do telehealth sessions via Zoom or teleconferencing. So I've been doing that the last couple weeks. That's been a little bit of a transition, and definitely a little bit of a challenge, but it's going really well. Personally, I don't have any family in the area. All my family's on the East Coast. I've just got my friends here that have been great, but it's definitely been a very scary situation. I'm talking to friends that I have in Italy and kind of seeing how things are going there, and I feel like those things are about to start happening here. So for me personally, I'm just really watching the news every day, watching the numbers to keep myself informed what's going on, because I think that's really important for everybody at this point.
And to piggyback on that, I run another group that is not PolePedia. It's actually for small business owners in my area here in Tyler, Texas. I also grew up in the East Coast. And to do a small plug, any pole dance studio owner who's listening to this, really go onto the SBA site. There are two different loans. One is an economic injury loan where the first $10,000 are going to be forgiven. So that makes it more of a grant than a loan. And then there's also the SBA 7A loan where you take it out, and so long as you can show that you are, they basically take things like your monthly utilities, any debt, and payroll, multiply that number by 4, and that's how much you can qualify for. And if you can show that you spend it on these debts or payroll, and payroll is only for employees that make less than $100,000, that will also be forgiven. So these are definite ways that you can keep your studio doors open, and just really keep informed. There is a lot of assistance out there, but you have to go find it for yourself.
Right. And also, what I've heard is you want to contact your bank ASAP about the 7A loans to try to get the ball rolling on that. And a couple ways that you can prepare to get those loans are to gather your payroll information from up to February of last year and be able to provide them with that, because they base the amount that you're getting off that as well. But I called my bank, I think yesterday, the day before, and they had no idea about the loans. As far as I know, today's Thursday. Banks should be knowing about it and having the information available for people by tomorrow, is what I've heard.
Mhm.
And then some of those, even just for full instructors, if anybody is an independent contractor, we're not allowed to have independent contractors in California anymore. But in other states, if people have independent contractors, they're extending unemployment benefits and some of these loans to even independent contractors. So you definitely want to check that out too.
That's perfect. That actually affects me. I own my own company, an online marketing company. As anybody who's watched this has heard me talk about until I'm blue in the face. But in such a way, unfortunately, I put myself into a position where instead I took an ownership disbursement rather than be a W-2 employee. I just tracked my own taxes. So I am not eligible for the payroll 7A loan. The SBA 7A loan, it can only be done through an SBA, Small Business Association, a qualified lender, which, as you correctly said, is a bank. So talk to your bankers, and if they don't know about it, then maybe you can educate them, but it also means you're first in line, and that's exactly where you want to be, like you
Yeah.
said.
If you haven't filled out the EIDL, there's economic injury disaster loan, I think is it called. You definitely want to do that ASAP, because, like I said, where people are expecting that money to go pretty fast. It's a really simple 10-minute application.
You can do that straight online at sba.gov. And thank you. I don't know many people who understand this. I did a live stream of it for my local area. So it's good to know, and it shows a lot about who you are, that you're aware and have already called your bank just like
Yeah,
that.
I've been reading everything that I possibly can and watching videos. Yesterday, I joined in a teleconference with the senators in the area that were talking about it and going over information for local business owners. So, yeah, I'm really trying to stay on top of it and take advantage of it as much as possible, because that's how our businesses are going to stay alive right now. Because the scary thing right now is we just have no idea how long we're going to have to stay closed for and what's going to go on. Initially people were thinking that this was just like an easy fix and that this was just we were just going to be closed for a couple weeks, and I knew that that was probably not what was going to happen. Minimum 2 to 3 months, maybe even longer than that. So this problem is not going to go away anytime soon, and even when it does, it's going to change a lot of things. How people do business. A lot of people have lost their jobs and can't afford things like videos anymore. So we're definitely going to have to change and adapt with the situation to stay alive.
And from an online marketing perspective, I may have mentioned this in another interview, but Amazon is no longer shipping out third-party items, only Amazon only items, which means that a large amount of the internet e-commerce has ground to a halt. I have many clients that either their websites can no longer make money because they don't have dropship items. Drop shipping comes from third party. This doesn't necessarily apply to Pole because there aren't many companies that currently dropship or have affiliate links to it. And on top of that, I also know that a lot of travel agencies, I have a client, he does travel, he's a travel agency specifically to Egypt and Italy, and this has affected him quite a lot as well. So everybody, the things that are going up are entertainment, education, and business. All those searches are up by at least 73%. So now is the time to build an audience and really stay connected with your local group. Stay connected with your pole students, your pole teachers. It's going to be through a community, long distance as it may be, but it's really, but by connecting, that's really how we're going to help things move on.
Yeah. And, you know, like I said, there's going to be so many changes going on right now with, I mean, you've got all these studios that have kind of freaked out and started offering the Zoom classes. So you go on Instagram or anywhere else and you see a million people running Zoom classes and that kind of thing. A lot of people are offering stuff for free. We offer a free trial class. There's a lot of, you know, pole teachers, pole instructors from around the world that are offering free lessons and that type of thing. And while it's great to take advantage of those and see different styles and everything else, it's, you know, it's really, really important for, if you were part of a studio before, to really stick with that studio and try to support them. Otherwise, you know, I've literally had to tell my pole students, you know, please support me or we will not be here in the future, you know, when this is all resolved. That's, you know, that's, I'm just being really honest and direct with them that that's a very real thing that could happen. You know, a lot of pole studios are at risk of going out of business right now, and it's great to take all these free things, but you really got to support your pole community where you're at if you want them to be around.
That's right. I talk about the economy quite often. I was actually in California a few weeks ago, and of all people, it was the taxi driver that I had the most stimulating economic conversation. And this is right when COVID had started to hit. And I was talking about how it is going to affect the economy because the economy is a bunch of small businesses and people handing money back and forth to each other. So if you are handing money back and forth to other people who are offering online classes one way or another, it's not going to help your local studio. It's not going to help your community. And that's really where things are. I personally have stopped eating any food that doesn't come from a local supermarket.
Same here.
Yeah, same thing with any restaurants. Please remember, behind every small business, there is a family, whether it's a family of one or a family with so many kids that they're all holed up in a back room watching television. These are all different people, and we need to make sure that all these businesses are still here when everything clears up. The worst thing for the economy, to last thing before I step off the soapbox, and thank you for the space. But the most important thing for the economy is to make sure that the small businesses do survive this, because it's going to be, the small business is the engine that is going to cause everything to start grinding and moving forward after the fact. If
Right.
small businesses go out of business, then it's going to take a longer amount of time for the economy to start rising back to levels where hopefully it was before.
Yeah. Yeah, just some things that I started doing as a small business right off the bat when this all started happening is, you know, I feel like initially, like I said, a lot of people weren't taking this seriously. And as soon as one of my instructors brought it to my attention, I think like maybe the end of February or so, I'm not sure when exactly, she showed me what was going on in China. But as soon as I saw those numbers, even though I think their numbers are completely fake, but whatever, even just the numbers that they had out, I mean, if you look at China's numbers compared to anybody else, it's ridiculous. Like, there's no way a country of 1.4 billion people only has 3,000 deaths. I'm sorry. But anyways, especially at this point. But yeah, as I started seeing their numbers go through, it was just being in healthcare and being around people that have diseases and knowing how viruses spread and stuff like that. I was really scared. I went out the next week and I bought a bunch of food. It was the week before everybody panic bought food. So I was thankful to get the things that I needed. And I thought I was, you know, being a little paranoid. You know, this feels really surreal, but at this point you really want to plan for worst case scenario just so that you're on top of it and that, you know, you can stay safe and keep your family safe and your business safe. So
That makes sense, especially with what the occupational therapy job that you have. You're very, very aware of the risks and how things can happen. So safety is constantly on your mind. I
right.
know even as we were just talking, I just had a bunch of food delivered to my door because I had pretty much the same thing. I bought the food ahead of time, and then I was like, maybe I might need to buy a little bit more. So
Yeah.
I got that before the backlogs became too large.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely scary, but I agree with you too. As much as I really want to support the local businesses and the restaurants around here, I'm too scared to buy food from restaurants or anywhere where I don't, you can't really see it being prepared. It's too risky right now, especially in California. You know, I saw something last night about the Surgeon General was saying like, oh, California is really nailing it. It seems like they've really flattened the curve, and I think it's way too early to even make that assumption because nobody that I know of has been tested for COVID. Like you know, they're not doing a whole lot of testing in California yet. So you have no idea who around here has it, who doesn't. And it's obviously super infectious. So I don't really trust getting food from anywhere but the grocery store, unlike you. So it's just not worth it right now. And at first people were saying like, oh, it's just older people that are dying. I just read this morning there was a 6-week-old baby that died of it somewhere on the East Coast. And it's not just affecting older people, it's affecting everybody. And, you should be scared. The people that are just acting like nothing's going on, I feel like, especially in this area in San Diego, at first people were like, cool, like I don't have to work, I'm gonna go to the beach. And the beaches were super crowded and people are just walking around like nothing's wrong. There's businesses that are still open around here that shouldn't be open. And people are out partying. We're in Oceanside, California, and the police department had to post stuff about, people trying to limit parties and stuff like that. And it just blows my mind. Like, I guess these people just aren't watching the news and have no idea what's going on, but that's definitely not the things to be doing right now for the
I
safety, health and safety of everybody. So
the joke I make is Kevin Bacon. We're all 6 degrees removed. We have to protect Kevin Bacon from getting sick.
yeah, and there's people that I've heard people say things like, well, I don't know anybody that has it yet. It's like, just wait, you will. This has literally spread all over the world in less than like 2 months right now. So the rate of infection is obviously it's extremely infectious. So, you should definitely you should be scared. I mean,
I
I do
know
feel like that, but
No, I agree. Even my future father-in-law, who lives all of 4 houses away, for a while, I didn't let after I came back from California, I didn't allow anybody to come and see me. I self-quarantined. Now I'm in Texas, where my fiance's family is, and a great deal of them live in the same neighborhood. And her grandmother works as a head nurse, and her mom works over at a nursing home with over 150 retired people. Like, it's not, am I afraid if I'm going to get sick or if she's going to get sick, which, by the way, we've had several deaths over here. Even a 36-year-old principal, who, by all records, doesn't seem to be in the risk zone, but is, like, it still can end up happening. And I know that if I do something incorrectly, or I high five the wrong person, or lick the wrong doorknob, as I say,
you
um,
go around your knobs or
well, everybody has a hobby.
okay,
You know how it can go. I'm limiting it down. I bought my own doorknobs. That was also delivered.
nice.
But if I do the wrong thing, and then my future mother-in-law is asymptomatic, she can go and spread it to all those people over there, and that would be on me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a very scary thing. You just want to be protecting yourself as much as possible. And, it's a tricky situation. I kind of look at it like when I used to ride a motorcycle. People always thought that I was crazy for riding a motorcycle because I've worked with so many people that have been in motorcycle accidents, and I wrecked my first motorcycle myself. But it's like, you don't want to stop the things that you enjoy, but at the same time, you want to be as careful as possible. So you just know that there's a small chance that you could get this no matter what. You know what I mean? Like, even though you're super cautious, you wear gloves, even if you wear a mask everywhere you go, you can fit like 1 billion virus particles on the size of a period. So, these particles are very, very small. they're everywhere. You know, they keep saying to wash your hands. That's always been the number one way to prevent getting, you know, infectious diseases like this. But, you know, regardless, there is a chance that you could get it no matter what. And yeah, you could be walking around with it and not even knowing it. That's what's so dangerous about this disease too, is you can not have symptoms for up to 14 days. That's 2 weeks that you're walking around touching things, seeing people, and possibly spreading it to other people. So it's really scary for sure. So
I'm pretty sure once I got back from California, Destiny, the one who does most of the writing for PolePedia, she was just getting past the flu, and then she came down with something else, and that something else gave her fever, shortness of breath, and a hearty cough. So it checked off all the different boxes. So I never got it. I just convinced myself I'm not going to get sick, and I didn't. But that certainly said, I'm pretty much, there's a very good chance that I'm a carrier, and we just have to be aware of that.
yeah. And for me personally, I'm not really that scared of getting sick because when I first started working with little kids, I was getting sick all the time, and now I rarely get sick at all. So for me personally, I feel like I have a very strong immune system. It's not something that would really affect me very much. I could be wrong. Who knows? You know, nobody knows. But, you know, I did feel obligated the other day to, you know, California's been requesting more healthcare workers because they're trying to prepare for if there is a major increase in cases and deaths here. So I went ahead and signed up and volunteered for that, which I'm honestly pretty nervous about doing, but I feel like it's the right thing to do.
I agree, and my hat's off to you. Again, don't feel like I can have the words to really underlie. You're doing what you can to help as many different people. I'm in my house, and that's kind of why I make these different videos, to keep as many pole studios open as possible, because that's really the grassroots of everything. That's why I have that other group with my local businesses and saying, hey guys, here's a loan, because we all have to do what we can. If I can even get one more person to take out that loan or that grant, then I can pop my collar and say, job well done. But the other thing to do is just continue to spread awareness. It's COVID-19 should not be a 4-letter F word. And I know everybody's talking about it. On the opposite end of the scale, everybody, please don't panic. You have to have a level head. You have to think about this. I know that there's a lot of hype, and panicking is almost worse than ignoring it completely.
Right. Absolutely. Be prepared, be safe. You know, my biggest thing I would recommend to people is watch the news, take it all with a grain of salt, because, you know, a lot of news companies exaggerate things and make, you know, blow it out of proportion. Read as much as you can, take it all in. You know, if you can handle it, a lot of people, like one of my instructors here has really bad anxiety, and I can't even tell her the numbers of stuff that are going on right now because she's having a really hard time. So I get that, you know, for some people it makes them almost a little bit too anxious, and it's very hard to handle right now, but try to stay educated and informed as much as you can. I've never been somebody that watches the news or cares about politics, but right now that's so important, especially if you own a small business. But even just if you don't, for your own safety and your health, know what's going on in your community, you know, stay on top of like the regulations that people are requesting and stuff like that. So it's just, yeah, you really got to stay informed. I think that's number one.
And that's exactly what I do. I read all the news across the entire spectrum, and then I end up coming to my own conclusions based on the aggregate amount of information and opinions that are going on. That way I can find out what the real numbers are.
Right. It's so frustrating right now because with the election coming up, you know, in the US, they're completely making this a political thing, which is really frustrating. This should not be a political thing. You know, and unfortunately you kind of have to sift through that and ignore that as much as possible and really focus on like what's being done in the different states and what's going on. And like I said, especially in your local area.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start winding this interview down. Do you have any final words that you want to say?
Um, I guess that just that I'm, you know, I'm very curious and very nervous about the future for, you know, pole studios, the pole community. You know, we just all really have to be willing to adapt to change and use that change to improve rather than let it tear us down. So, you know, just be open and willing to take on the changes and make the changes that you need to do for your business to keep it going.
Well, thank you very much, Dre Deed. Thank you for your time. I look forward to chatting with you for a couple minutes afterwards.
Right.
But for now, take care.
Thanks.